Hello, my name is Claire Coleman, and I am a cabin crew instructor with Airbus. Welcome to this Airbus Win video on evacuation management. When the decision to evacuate the aircraft has been taken, effective management by the cabin crew is essential to the success of an evacuation. Although aircraft are different, the evacuation philosophy remains the same: to maximize the use of all usable exits and maintain a balance and rapid passenger flow from each usable exit in order to evacuate the aircraft as quickly as possible. Therefore, the following presentation highlights the main competencies and actions required of the cabin crew. So let us now have a brief look at the topics which will be raised in this video. During this training, we will look at the main evacuation objectives and the contributing factors that may affect an evacuation, the cabin crew preparation, and in particular the requirement to have extensive knowledge of the aircraft, as well as external factors that can influence the evacuation and in particular passenger behavior. This leads us to a safety bulletin that was defined by the Civil Aviation Safety Authority in Australia on the actions and issues for cabin crew to consider with regards to passenger baggage. This will be then followed by strategies that can be adopted by operators in order to manage baggage retrieval. There are some suggestions for cabin crew training, followed by the mental preparation that is required to be performed every flight by all crew. We will then review the main cabin crew actions with respect to commands, slide management, exit management, and cabin awareness, as well as what to do when there is a reduction of passenger flow to the exit, and the actions for the additional crew who are not responsible for an exit. This will be followed by a video highlighting the actions of an additional crew during the A380 evacuation demonstration. Following this, the final duties and tasks for the cabin crew, both prior to evacuating and post-evacuation. Finally, ending with a summary of aircraft incidents and a collection of reference documents that may be used within cabin training. So let us begin with the evacuation objectives. Now, the main objective in an evacuation is to be able to rapidly evacuate all aircraft occupants from the aircraft. This should be done in a safe manner by quickly establishing and maintaining a rapid passenger flow from all usable exits. The cabin crew should maximize the use of all usable exits and, when necessary, redirect passengers to alternate exits whilst keeping a balanced passenger evacuation flow. The certification tests conducted by aircraft manufacturers for evacuation demonstrations comply with specific conditions and timeframes, such as only half of the exits will be usable, and the test must be completed within a 90-second timeframe. However, during actual evacuations, there is no specific timeframe in which the evacuation must be conducted, and all exits must be utilized. The main philosophy during an evacuation is for passengers to be evenly distributed amongst the usable exits, and therefore it is the responsibility of the cabin crew to maintain this balance. If an exit becomes congested, the cabin crew should be able to adapt their instructions to passengers and direct them to another usable exit. It is essential that the cabin crew provide clear and assertive communication to the passengers and other crew. And we will look at the different types of commands that can be used later on in this video. The cabin crew must remain aware of their surroundings, both inside and outside the aircraft, by maintaining their situation awareness during the entire evacuation, and be able to rapidly adapt their actions if necessary. Finally, passengers are not trained on evacuations and as a result rely on the cabin crew to assertively manage and instruct them in this stressful situation. Assertiveness with exit and passenger management is key in maximizing the chance of a successful evacuation. The cabin crew are required to have knowledge of the aircraft in order to make these decisions during an evacuation. However, certain factors may pose as risks for the overall outcome of the evacuation. So let us have a further look at what they may be. In the case of a life-threatening situation, it is essential that the aircraft is evacuated quickly and efficiently in order to increase the occupants' chances of survival. Consequently, it is important for the cabin crew to have a thorough knowledge of the aircraft and be able to apply their knowledge of procedures and rapidly adapt to any changing situations. On the next slide, I'll go into further detail of what is required with aircraft configuration knowledge. However, from a cabin crew's perspective, preparation, knowledge, and understanding of the aircraft and their associated procedures is essential and must be addressed within cabin training. Cabin crew must also use their situation awareness in order to understand both the inside and outside conditions, in order to make fast decisions or adapt their actions if necessary. An example of this is a fire at an exit. The cabin crew must redirect passengers to another usable exit. The cabin crew must not leave their exit and must prevent any passengers from opening this blocked exit, as the risk to life would be great. Environment awareness in the form of understanding passenger behavior is critical in understanding and possibly influencing, as the behavior of the passenger can greatly affect the overall evacuation, such as baggage retrieval, which may slow down an evacuation. Therefore, it is essential that the cabin crew are trained on passenger behavior awareness and the passenger motivation, decision making during an evacuation, which can affect the overall outcome. So let's have a look at exactly what kind of aircraft knowledge the cabin crew should have. The cabin configuration can have a huge impact on the evacuation, and to enhance the cabin crew's situation awareness, as previously mentioned, the cabin crew should have a thorough knowledge of the aircraft. So the cabin crew should be familiar with the cabin layout, and in particular, areas where congestion may occur or areas where exits may be underutilized. For example, exits located in a low density seating area, or an exit in which passengers can arrive at from different directions. Particular areas in which the visibility to another exit may be restricted due to the location of galleys, lavatories, wardrobes, etc., can impact on the decision making of the cabin crew during an evacuation and may affect communication between the crew members. Crew must have a clear understanding of the number and type of exits that are on the aircraft. Exit size and the location can also influence if the exit may be congested or if an exit is behind passenger seats and not visible, resulting in the exit drying up, as well as the number of passengers that can jump from the exit at the same time. Finally, a thorough knowledge of the slides, how they inflate automatically and manually, and the disconnection process. Knowledge of the aircraft will enable the cabin crew to be able to easily adapt their actions when necessary in order to achieve the overall objective of the evacuation. Now, in addition to having knowledge of the aircraft, it's essential for cabin crew to understand the external factors that can influence the success of the evacuation. One of the external factors is passenger behavior, which we will look at next. As documented within the Airbus Cabin Crew Operating Manual (THECOM) evacuation guidelines, each passenger will be individually motivated during an evacuation when the primary survival instinct takes over. The behavior and attitudes of passengers in an emergency evacuation can either be positive or negative. Some passengers behave calmly, follow the required evacuation procedures, open exits when required to do so, and help other passengers. Some other passengers may display competitive behavior, such as pushing and climbing over seatbacks to get to the exits ahead of other passengers. Other passengers may be unsure of what to do and feel stress, panic, and fear, and as a consequence may ignore commands, not act according to the cabin crew's instructions, display disorientation, or unexpected actions such as a refusal to jump or baggage retrieval. Therefore, cabin crew must manage this behavior that is displayed by passengers and maintain assertive management with them in order to influence the passengers' decision making that is made under stressful conditions. It was noted during previous evacuations that passengers who listened and understood the pre-flight briefing or the safety briefing or emergency briefing were better prepared and were able to take positive actions in an evacuation. Now, shortly we will look at several strategies in which we can prepare the passengers. It is also important that understanding passenger behavior and the artful skill of influence is integrated into cabin crew training, both theoretically and practically with simulated exercises. Such training will enable the cabin crew to have a set of skills in which to deal with various scenarios should they arise during an emergency. As stated in the quote from the CCOM, each passenger is self-motivated, and this can include the motivation to retrieve baggage during an evacuation, which we'll look at now in more detail. Now, recent incidents and studies have highlighted that passengers may attempt to collect their personal belongings prior to evacuating an aircraft, especially where danger to life is not evident to them, as highlighted by the quote from ICAO. Passengers who attempt to take their baggage may not be focused on following the crew member's instructions and resulting in a reduction or loss of situation awareness. This can lead to a slower evacuation time, the possibility of the baggage damaging the slide, and may increase the risk of injury, all of which are risks that the passenger may not be aware of. Although crew members verbally command passengers to leave their carry-on baggage behind during an emergency evacuation, this information is provided at a time when passengers are highly stressed and the noise level in the cabin is likely fairly high. So hence, this is not an optimal time for understanding or adhering to critical safety information. Evidence from recent evacuations show that a significant number of passengers can be expected to put themselves and others at risk by taking baggage with them during evacuations. So what should the cabin crew do? Now, the Civil Aviation Safety Authority, known as CASA, issued a Cabin Safety Bulletin number 9 on the management of cabin baggage in an aircraft evacuation. Now, CASA identified the possible actions and issues that may occur due to the decision making of the cabin crew concerning passenger baggage. Now, CASA provided examples and areas for the cabin crew to consider that may be a result of the actions that were taken. Now, CASA looked at 3 scenarios, which I have consolidated into 2, with regards to baggage retrieval and the possible consequences. The first scenario is the passenger arrives at the exit with their baggage and the cabin crew remove the baggage from them and store it within the area prior to the passenger evacuating. Now, by the cabin crew taking this action could result in a slower rate of egress, taking into consideration the time it takes for the cabin crew to take the bag from the passenger. It could lead to an excess amount of bags being stored at the door, which could impact the evacuation path to the exit for other passengers and become an obstacle. It could lead to cabin crew injury when removing the bag, or a delay in the evacuation if the passenger confronts the crew with verbal or physical abuse when trying to take the bag. Now, the second scenario is if the passenger arrives at the exit and the baggage is removed from the aircraft either by the passenger or by the crew throwing the bag down the slide, and this could result in damage to the slide. The baggage may damage the sliding surface, and consequently, this can lead to the slide becoming inoperable. It could lead to injury to the persons when sliding with the baggage. It can lead to a congestion at the base of the slide in which the passengers with the bags may take more time to leave the slide, and a slower rate of egress. Now, either decision has their own possible consequences, and the following page has a combination of possible strategies that could be adopted by airlines in order to combat these issues with regards to passengers trying to take their baggage with them during an evacuation. Now, numerous strategies and ideas have been documented in recent years from agencies and aviation authorities, which recommend enhancements that can be made to both the passenger information and cabin crew training. Now, the following strategies have been taken from the Civil Aviation Safety Authority of Australia, referred to as CASA, the International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO, the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, and finally the European Union Aviation Safety Agency, EASA. Now, they encompass ideas on how to increase passenger awareness and improvement to crew training in order to empower each crew member when faced with the challenge of passenger behavior and, in particular, baggage retrieval. Now, pre-flight passenger safety briefs or safety demonstrations must emphasize the importance of leaving baggage on board the aircraft in the event of an evacuation. Although it is a requirement that these briefs are conducted prior to every takeoff and as part of a cabin preparation during anticipated emergencies, but this brief could also be performed prior to every landing. Now, previous incidents have demonstrated that when passengers pay attention to the safety briefs, they are often more compliant with cabin crew's instructions during an emergency and felt better prepared. It is extremely challenging for operators to attract the attention of passengers with the safety briefs, especially when faced with frequent flyers. However, it is important for cabin crew to attract the passengers' attention to them. Now, many operators regularly change their IFE-based safety briefs using humor as a means to catch the passengers' attention. The incorporation of clear instructions on the passenger safety cards, or if available via the in-flight entertainment system, should clearly state that baggage must not be taken in an evacuation. Reinforcement of this message during non-critical times may result in the passenger complying with this during emergency scenarios. During emergency situations, it's imperative that cabin crew provide clear, short, and loud commands to passengers to leave all baggage behind. However, due to external noise, it may be impossible for the passengers to understand the crew instructions. So a possible solution, which can also reduce the cabin crew workload, is to have automated announcements. They provide passengers with clear instructions which can be heard by the passengers in the cabin prior to reaching the exit. It is essential that cabin crew receive crew resource management training, referred to as CRM or human factors training. This type of training enhances the individual and the group's assertiveness and provides each cabin crew with skills that may be useful in an emergency situation. Now, cabin crew training should include, but is not limited to, passenger management and how to influence, understanding the passenger behavior and the different behaviors that may be anticipated, as well as having cultural awareness which may impact on the passenger's decision making. Effective communication, leadership, and decision making, as well as understanding of what situation awareness is and how to maintain it, as well as understanding the effects of surprise and startle. Finally, the inclusion of risk assessments and the ability to make decisions under extremely stressful conditions. Now, CRM training must be conducted on a yearly basis and can be conducted within the classroom, but also incorporated into practical training in which specific scenarios are simulated for a more hands-on approach. Scenario-based simulator training allows the cabin crew to enhance their knowledge and skill retention, promotes critical thinking and their decision making. Inclusion of case studies within cabin training are also beneficial to the learning path, as they provide points of discussion in order to enhance the learning experience and understanding of crew's actions during critical situations. Now, case studies highlight concerns over possible evacuation events, such as baggage retrieval, and allow for the cabin crew to understand and discuss what actions have been taken and why, and analyze occurrences that were managed well or actions that had negative contributing factors, all within the safe environment of training. As we saw on the previous page with the list of various strategies that have been recommended, cabin crew training is critical in empowering the cabin crew with skills and knowledge in order to manage situations that may occur, such as baggage retrieval. The authorities have recommended that crew training emphasize key factors such as the management of passengers. As we saw on the previous slide, by incorporating this into cabin crew training will promote critical thinking, enhance the decision making of the crew, and provides the cabin crew with a set of skills that they can use in order to manage situations if they occur during an evacuation. Now, for additional information, the following reference documents can be used. The reference documents can be taken from ICAO, EASA, Transport Canada, and the Civil Aviation Safety Authority of Australia. All of these documents are listed at the end of this presentation. So, within an airline's cabin crew training, evacuation safety training is a requirement. So, cabin crew should be trained on other elements that impact the evacuation, which include, but not limited to, door and slide operation, verbal and physical instructions, as well as mental preparation. Therefore, the following information provides us with the opportunity to review these main actions that are expected by the cabin crew. Now, mental preparation should be performed every takeoff and landing as a means to encourage the cabin crew to mentally prepare for an evacuation. Airbus recommend that this preparation, also termed silent review, is conducted by each crew member during all critical flight phases. Now, previous accident investigations have reported that the cabin crew who had completed this silent review reacted more effectively and avoided the surprise and startle effect, and increased the probability of responding correctly to the emergency. The silent review helps the cabin crew focus their attention on the duties and responsibilities that they may have in the event of an evacuation. The silent review may include, but is not limited to, the brace position to adopt for impact. For example, is the cabin attendant seat forward or aft facing? The possible commands that the cabin crew may have to shout to the passengers, the number and type of passengers within the assigned area. So as an example, are there any unaccompanied children within the assigned area that the cabin crew are responsible for? The identification of an able-bodied passenger, ABP, to assist the cabin crew with tasks. The location of the assist space and what can be seen from this space, and consider if there are any restrictions. The exit operation, including actions if the power assist fails, or the location of the manual inflation handle. Assessment of the inside and outside conditions. Now, the silent review should contain all of the elements needed to review evacuation duties and responsibilities in order for the crew to be able to react rapidly. Implementing a silent review will also help cabin crew in the situation awareness and focuses the cabin crew's attention on the primary safety function. Consequently, if an emergency arises, the cabin crew will not spend additional time in the disbelief phase thinking, this can't be happening to me, as he or she is already mentally focused on what to do when it happens. Now, when an emergency happens, the cabin crew are required to instruct and guide passengers and other crew members using both verbal and physical commands. The commands should be assertive, positive, short, loud, and visible if using physical direction. Now, the command should be heard by the passengers, but also by the other crew members who may be basing their decisions based on what they hear and what they see. It may be necessary for cabin crew to be able to adapt to an unfolding situation and vary the commands that they use. Both verbal and physical commands play an important part in the evacuation process and can greatly influence the performance of the passengers and improve the overall evacuation rates. Many operators keep their commands to a minimum, and several prefer using short, concise, and positive commands after the study that was conducted by Cranfield University in 1996 by Helen Muir and Ann Kobit. Now, their study was used to investigate the influence of the cabin crew's actions and commands on passenger evacuation rates. Their test results indicated that evacuation rates when the crew were being assertive were the fastest and as a result greatly influenced the efficiency of the evacuation. Now, in addition to assertive commands, exit and slide management is imperative in the management of an evacuation. Prior to opening any exit, it is vital that the cabin crew check that the slide deployment area is free from smoke, fire, obstacles, debris, etc. Once the door handle has been fully lifted, the slide will deploy and inflate. And the inflation time is rapid, and all slides will deploy and inflate within 10 seconds. Now, the sound of the slide inflating will continue even after the slide is fully deployed and inflated. Therefore, the cabin crew must initiate the evacuation as soon as they have visual confirmation that the slide has deployed and is fully inflated. Now, should the slide fail to inflate automatically, there is either a manual inflation handle that must be pulled or a manual inflation push button that must be pressed. In the case of ditching, the cabin crew must immediately pull the manual inflation handle or immediately press the manual inflation push button. In windy conditions, if the slide does not touch the ground, the weight of a minimum of one person holding the tow end will maintain the slide on the ground. Now, once the slide is fully inflated and ready for use, the cabin crew must not block the evacuation path, but must stand in the assist space, protect themselves by holding an assist handle, and quickly establish the passenger flow using appropriate commands. Management of the slide is a continual task, and the slide status should be monitored throughout the entire evacuation in the case that it becomes damaged and consequently unusable. The cabin crew must be aware of any changes and be ready to adapt their actions if necessary. If the slide becomes damaged or unusable, the cabin crew must immediately block their exit and redirect passengers to another appropriate usable exit. It is vitally important for passengers to immediately move away from the base of the slide in order not to have a build-up or congestion of passengers, either on the slide itself or at the base of the slide, which could ultimately lead to injuries. Some operators brief the first passenger prior to sliding in management of the base of the slide. Other airlines rely on the cabin crew to verbally instruct passengers from their assist base. Now, an evacuation is not a common event from the passenger's perspective, and therefore this may be the first time that they are requested to jump and slide. Any interruption to the passenger flow should be avoided. For some passengers, the height of the slide combined with being told to jump can be daunting, and as a result, some passengers may try to sit on the door sill before going down the slide. This must be avoided as it will delay the flow of passengers from the exit. Therefore, the cabin crew must use whatever force is necessary to evacuate the passengers. For example, a push in the lower back, and not have the evacuation slow down due to passengers' hesitation. As we've previously seen, baggage retrieval can also slow down an evacuation and ideally should be avoided. Understanding the status of the exits is important in an evacuation. Utilizing as many usable exits is key in the speed of the evacuation. However, some exits may be blocked or unusable from the start of the evacuation, or halfway through the evacuation become unusable for various reasons. So therefore, it is crucial that the cabin crew have an awareness of their area both inside and outside in order to make a decision to redirect passengers to the most appropriate usable exit. The blocked exit must not be left unattended in the case that a passenger may attempt to open this exit. Exits can become congested due to their location in the cabin, their size, and the amount of passengers within the area. So therefore, although the exit is usable, the cabin crew must actively redirect passengers to other exits in order to avoid congestion and maintain a balance of flow from as many exits as possible. This redirection may also include exit bypass. Now, exit bypass is when the cabin crew redirect passengers to other usable exits that are not congested. However, these exits may not necessarily be the nearest exits. Now, throughout the entire evacuation, cabin crew must continuously be aware of what is happening at their exit, at other exits, and in the cabin. They must maintain effective communication with the passengers and other crew members. They must be able to make a rapid assessment and implement fast decision making, and be aware of changes in the passenger flow rate at their exit and make appropriate decisions, such as redirection if necessary. Now, if the passenger flow to the exit has reduced or becomes dried up, the cabin crew must attract the passengers to this exit in order to maintain a balance of passenger flow. The cabin crew should use any means possible in order to attract the passengers to their exit. Finally, some cabin crew may not be solely responsible for an exit and therefore should assist colleagues by directing the passengers to the most appropriate usable exits and assisting in maintaining a balance of passenger flow. Crew who are not responsible for door operation, additional crew, can be allocated different tasks in the event of an evacuation and may have a dedicated task for their assigned position based on the airline procedures. The following video is one example of a cabin crew member who was provided the task of stair management and redirection on the upper deck of the A380. You will see she plays an active role in the passenger redirection by using both verbal and physical commands. This video has been extracted from the A380 evacuation test demonstration.
Evacuate, evacuate! Go, go! Hier, nach hinten, nach hinten, nach hinten! Schneller nach hinten! Lauf, 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 lauf! Schneller! Rauf, rauf, rauf! Schneller, schneller, schneller! 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 Schneller, schneller, schneller! Rauf, 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 rauf! Raus hier! Rauf, 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 rauf! Schneller, schneller! Immer zwei rutschen! Immer zwei! Raus hier! Schneller, schneller! Rauf, rauf, rauf! Rauf, rauf, rauf! Raus hier! Schneller! Raus hier! Hopp, hopp, hopp! Hopp, hopp, hopp! Raus hier! Schneller! Schneller! Raus hier!
Now, when the passenger evacuation has been completed and the assigned area is empty or it is no longer safe to remain on the aircraft, the cabin crew should take their assigned emergency equipment with them if the evacuation was not at an airfield. They should evacuate the aircraft via the most appropriate and usable exit. Now, once on the ground, the cabin crew tasks are not yet over. So if necessary, utilize the megaphone in order to be able to assist and direct passengers away from the aircraft. It's important to group the passengers and keep them together, ensuring that they stay away from the fuel, fire, and emergency vehicles. Conduct a head count in order to ascertain that the number of passengers that have evacuated. Ensure the passengers and the crew do not smoke, and if necessary, provide first aid and assistance. Remember, the passengers may appear disorientated due to shock and stress, and therefore it is very important that the cabin crew continue to manage them until the rescue and firefighting service take over. In conclusion, when a significant threat of imminent danger exists to all aircraft occupants, the decision to evacuate the aircraft may be made. Therefore, the evacuation needs to be conducted rapidly, efficiently, and safely in order to reduce the likelihood of injuries and fatalities. Cabin crew do not experience evacuations on a daily basis, and therefore, in order to prepare the cabin crew, both initial and yearly training is important in providing the appropriate knowledge and how to retain this knowledge, as well as a set of skills that can be used in order to maximize the cabin crew's actions and influence the outcome of an event. Training should also include simulated hands-on exercises, as well as the incorporation of CRM modules to help in the preparation process for the cabin crew. In addition to the training, mental preparation during every flight in the form of silent reviews has been proven to aid in the cabin crew's overall performance and minimize the effect of startle and surprise. The cabin crew have an essential role in the evacuation process. and their actions can greatly increase the probability of a successful evacuation and the saving of lives. The following list of case studies focuses towards accidents in which passenger baggage retrieval has taken place. In addition, the 3 theoretical studies provide further analysis on aircraft evacuations. The following reference documents have been utilized for the definition of this wind training video.